now we're looking at the reproductive tract of a non-pregnant sow, and we'll start inside, go through these and work our way out just as we did with the cow. This is the ovary on this sow, and here's the ovary on the other side. The obvious big difference that you see comparing these to cattle is that there are a lot more structures on the ovary in a pig than we saw on cows. We saw typically 1, maybe 2 corpora on the ovaries of cow. Here we'll see, in this case, these large red structures. Those are all corpora, okay? And it makes sense, right? Pigs are a litter-bearing species. There's one egg that develops, one oocyte develops inside each follicle. And so when a pig is in heat, she has to ovulate multiple follicles to produce that litter. So she's got multiple eggs to be fertilized. And then all of those follicles will be transformed into corpora. So we're looking at a tract from a sow probably 10 or 12 days after she was in heat, and these corpora are all very large and healthy and fully functional. They're not the bright yellow orange color that you see in cattle, and actually cattle are different from most other species in that regard. Cattle and humans both will have that deep yellow color to their corpora, but most other species, it's going to be more like this pig with the tannish, reddish kind of color rather than that deep orange yellow that we saw here. I'm going to open this one up a little bit more. Okay, let me try and blot a little bit of the blood out of there. Be able to see those a little bit better. But these are very healthy corpora. They tend to have cavity at the center of them. This particular individual does. They're not completely solid all the way through, but you can see very nicely that luteal tissue in there. Here's one that's got a very large cavity to it. Okay, but that's what corpora look like in a pig, and again, there'll be multiple corpora on a normal cycling individual. So then, just as we saw in the cow, there'll be the fimbria, that membrane that lays over the ovary. So the ovary would normally look like this and have the fimbria draped over it. But then we can take that fimbria back very easily. See the ovary? So this is the inner surface of the fimbria, all in here. Okay, and that fimbria then will lead down into the oviduct. And I think you should be able to see the oviduct kind of coming out of the fimbria here. It's very, very nice, larger diameter than what we saw in the cow. Right? Very easy to see the oviduct in a sow. There it is. Okay, and then it goes up into the tip of this very long uterine horn. Okay, and we have to have very long uterine horns because the sow has to be able to accommodate a litter of baby pigs. There could be 18, 20, and some of the real prolific breeds, you know, even more than that. Piglets developing in the uterus. And so we need those long uterine horns to accommodate that. Uterine horns come together, very short body of the uterus. Then we have the cervix, the vagina out here, then to the labia. You can see the clitoris there in this female. And so structurally, you know, the rest of the structures are very similar to what we saw in the cow. The main difference, the length of the uterine horns to accommodate the litter, and then the multiple structures on the ovaries. So the ovaries that we saw there had corpora lutea on them. I'm going to bring over another tract. And we can take a look at structures on these ovaries. Okay. So is that a good position? Can you see that well? Okay. There are two types of structures that are pretty obvious here. These are the follicles. They're not quite as big as the corpora lutea, and I hope that you can pick up that they're fluid-filled, thin-walled and fluid-filled. They are not solid like the corpus luteum. I'm going to get my scalpel, and I think what's going to happen is as I cut into these, they're going to burst, and you'll see the fluid ooze out. Okay. Do you think you could see that? Is that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. Here's another one. Okay. So those have follicular fluid in them. Okay. So those are the follicles in a pig. Not nearly as big as they can get in cows, but a lot more of them. Okay. And then the other structure that you see here are these pale white nodes. These are regressed corpora lutea from the previous cycle. Okay, so you know what obviously had happened was that this sow didn't become pregnant. These corpora lutea regressed, formed these white nodes. They regressed down to these hard white nodes. These are called corpora albicantia, and then a new crop of follicles has started to grow, so that'll cause the sow to come into heat and then ultimately release the eggs in these follicles and give her a chance to become pregnant again. So that's a pretty nice view of what an ovary would look like maybe a couple of days before a sow is ready to ovulate, a couple of days before she'd come into heat. The other reproductive tract I want to show you is this one. And this is from a sow that has an abnormality. This is the ovary on a sow that has, ovarian follicular cysts. These are much, much larger than ovulatory size follicles. Ovulatory size follicles are probably only maybe a little bit less than ½ an inch in diameter. These are, obviously exceed that by a lot. So these are follicles that have persisted, have grown to an abnormally large size, and so these are ovarian follicular cysts. So we saw an example of one in a cow, but again, just as we see with every other type of structure in the pig, if a cow has one or two, pigs typically have 10 or 12. And the same would be, same thing you see here with these cysts. Okay? What I want to do next is open up the inside surface of the uterus, and we saw nice caruncles, those little nodes little nodules on the inside surface of the uterus in a cow. But let's look and see what it's like in a pig. I think that's should be enough. And what I hope you can see there is that the inside surface is certainly folded, but there aren't little discrete nodules that push out from the surface. There are lots of folds and so on, but not discrete little caruncles like we saw clearly on the inside surface of the cow's uterus. And so when we go to look at the pregnant pigs, I think what you're going to see is that that they also don't have cotyledons. Okay, and I think that'll be apparent when we open those up. So I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to say about a non-pregnant pig. We'll go ahead next and look at some pregnant tracks.